first hour of our program, we had on Ronald Cruz, who's a participant in Occupy Cal and an attorney with BAM, BAMN.com, by any means necessary. And just a couple of short clips. I hope he wouldn't consider these out of context. It's impossible to edit anything and not make it out of entirely context. But I was, frankly, I was just trying to get an update on what's going on with the Occupy movement in California. And the conversation wandered in a direction I totally did not expect. Here is one piece of it.
Well, one, I don't condemn that because the only way we...
hang on just a second. I asked about the use of violence, about the people going up to windows in stores in Oakland and smashing them with what look like shovels. I've seen the video. I think pretty much everybody has seen the video. And shouldn't we condemn violence? Here we go.
Well, one, I don't condemn that because the only way we've got to make clear that we're going to fight by any means necessary, and that's the quote from Malcolm X.
And here's another clip. Well, do you think smashing windows in buildings is going to increase the power of your movement?
Well, we've got to...
Shouldn't that be a simple no?
We've got to build the power of our movement.
And so anyhow, it continued like that. Joshua Holland is with us with alternate.org. Joshua, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me.
There's not a lot of people talking about this. There are, and I'm not characterizing Ronald as part of this. I want to take him out of this equation. The conversation with him was thought-provoking, but he wasn't, in my opinion, out and out advocating, let's go out and smash windows. But there are people who are within the Occupy movement. And it seems to me, having lived through the 60s and having been in SDS and seen whether the Weather Underground split out of that and seen how that came down, I mean, I was there, that the anarchist groups who identify themselves as anarchists, who call themselves anarchists, who are advocating violence and committing violence, are actually hurting the goal of the Occupy movement. I'm curious, A, your take on this, and B, why, when I bring this up, I am getting all kinds of messages on my message board and calls into our comment line and whatnot saying, hey, don't talk about the violence in the movement.
Well, okay, so those are two kind of complex questions. The first thing is that I would disagree with your characterization that a lot of people are actually advocating using vandalism.
No, I didn't say a lot. I said some. I think it's a small fragment, frankly.
Yes, it is a small fragment. But the problem, I think, is that a much more common belief among the occupiers is what they call a diversity of tactics. And in many ways, you can take that as a euphemism for approving of these tactics. But I think that a lot of people involved in the movement really do embrace the idea that different groups can pursue their own autonomous actions, and they have to figure out ways to live with one another. So what you get is that a relatively valid kind of value system in this leaderless movement, that is, that people should be able to pursue what they think is best, is making it extremely difficult for the majority to condemn any action. So it's there's this very small group that actually wants to engage in vandalism, but there's actually a very large group that believes in this diversity of tactics idea. So this is what makes self-policing difficult. Last night at the General Assembly at Occupy Oakland, this was a topic. There was a proposal to endorse this idea of a diversity of tactics and figure out ways of having one group's tactics not disturb other people. In other words, if you want to break windows, you might, for example, go elsewhere, far away from where there's any kind of demonstration, like where there's a peaceful demonstration going on, to do that kind of thing.
Right.
It makes it very hard to self-police. But, I mean, I think that that's inherent also in the leaderless nature of this movement.
Well, it seems that it's inherent in all movements. I mean, this is it's almost like what we're looking at is Malcolm X, splitting off from Stokely Carmichael, or from what's his name, his mentor, and and the various splits actually that occurred in the civil rights movement in the 60s, and then also in the anti-war movement, the splitting off of the Weather Underground from SDS.
Well, I think that's part of what makes the idea of a diversity of tactics somewhat appealing, is that they've seen that divisions over what is the best or most appropriate tactics can really divide a movement, and they're trying to maintain unity while people have different opinions about what works and what doesn't. Now, there's another aspect to this which we're not talking about, which is that, at least in Oakland, and I think this is common in many of these occupations, there's an intense distrust of the media. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason that you're getting, people telling you to shut up about it on your message boards is that there's this belief that the media is hopelessly biased against protests, which I think is fairly accurate.
Yes.
But then they take it a step further, and many of them think that the media narratives are fixed and unmovable, and they just don't even bother trying to do things that might, cast the movement in the best possible light. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a complex situation, and it's something that I would say that the movement itself is really grappling with, at least out here. This resolution last night failed. It was the second similar resolution in the last couple, or the second resolution dealing with these issues in the last two General Assemblies. So this is something that they're struggling with.
Yeah, it's got to be a tough one, and I think I've made it clear a number of times on this program that each Occupy group is its own group, and I'm not telling anybody how to do anything. I just make that.
Yes.
I also, however, agree with Martin Luther King when he said, when he was talking about using violence to achieve a nonviolent end, and he said, and this is where nonviolent resistance breaks with communism and all those other systems which argue that the ends justify the means, because we realize that the end is pre-existent in the means. In the long run of history, destructive means cannot bring about constructive ends.
And in a much more kind of day-to-day pragmatic, on-the-ground way, I think that there's, there are a number of kind of intellectual discussions around this issue, and the one thing that I don't think is recognized enough is that, if you want to have a protest for a day, okay. If you want a sustained occupation, I think the support of the community around you is absolutely necessary, vitally necessary.
And that's not going to happen if you're trashing that community.
Exactly. And here we get back to that, idea that the media narratives are fixed. What you'll hear activists say is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because, we're going to be portrayed as, hooligans and animals no matter what. So why even try?
So therefore become them?
Well, no, they're not even saying become them. They're it's the argument for why you can't condemn other people's tactics with which you don't agree.
Yeah, but I think
a lot of people don't agree with those tactics, but they don't condemn them either.
Yeah, very interesting. So we're left with no resolution.
We've run out of time to talk about Oakland.
Yeah, Joshua, if you want to stick around for another 5 minutes, we can continue the conversation.
Yeah, let's talk about what happened this morning with the raid on Occupy.
Thom Hartmann here with you. Joshua Holland with alternate.org on the line with us. Joshua, Occupy Oakland.
Occupy Oakland. The second eviction was this morning. I was out there since about 2 in the morning. At about 5, a very, very large force of police officers and riot gear came down and evicted Oakland. And the thing that it spelled out for me is they used very traditional crowd control techniques. And I think that today's eviction, which was remarkably peaceable, really demonstrated in stark terms how unnecessary and excessive the force used in recent weeks has been in Oakland. Right. They achieved the exact same thing that they achieved on October 25th when they went in with flashbang grenades, tear gas, and less lethal projectiles. And I think it's hard for people who are dealing with occupations in other cities across the country to really visualize what it's been like out there in Oakland. You know, these weapons are designed maybe not to maim and kill, but they have the effect of creating the sensation that one is on the battlefield. Mm-hmm. You know, there's explosions, multiple explosions, loud, smoky, thunderous explosions, and an enormous amount of gunfire. And, you know, you feel rounds crackling in the air. It's a terrifying experience. And there was we've talked about the backlash, the political backlash that's happened out here in the Bay Area, which is an inherently progressive community. And today they just showed that had they chosen, they can achieve the same ends without any injuries whatsoever. They came in, they advanced slowly in these, you know, very significant lines of police and riot gear. They boxed off a corner where the protesters could remain and allowed them to protest. They decided not to declare it an unlawful assembly and shoot tear gas at it. Mm-hmm. And the effect was that, you know, there were 32 arrests, no injuries, and eventually the protesters, having had the opportunity to vent their frustration, to protest, got tired and went home. So it just highlights for me exactly, you know, the California Manual for Crowd Control says that law enforcement must use the minimum force necessary to apprehend perpetrators and restore order. Right. And we saw that this morning, and again, it just highlights that these past few weeks, all of these impressive displays of police enforcement that you've seen on YouTube were not the minimal amount of force needed to affect the same outcome.
They were, to borrow a phrase from the 1968 Chicago Convention, they were a police riot.
That's right.
And speaking of violence,
yes.
And I think that if anything kind of highlights, and probably Mayor Kwan is getting this, highlights Martin Luther King's point that the end is embedded in the means. And although I'm guessing that there probably are a lot of people who were there this morning who would suggest that even the police moving across that park and clearing that park is itself a form of violence.
Well, the thing is that you had the same crew of protesters and, you know, there was no vandalism. I think that the overbearing, you know, this hyper-militarized, terrifying response that we've seen in the past also spurs on that, you know, that tendency to feel like people are justified in defending their ground and defending themselves. You know, I've heard a lot of people who don't advocate violence but say, look, we are justified in self-defense. Right. And, you know, today's police action was not the type of thing where you felt justified in self-defense. People were frustrated. They were angry to be evicted, but it did not drive that same level of animosity.
So what's next for Occupy Oakland?
Well, you know, I'm left with the same question. We talked after the 25th eviction, and I'm left with the same question. What is the end game here? This was an action that reportedly cost $1 million. The occupiers themselves, you know, they promise that they will take back that plaza as soon as they can. The Oakland City Council is talking about hiring private security guards. You know, I think that the occupiers' resolve is going to outlast the city of Oakland's budget for private security guards.
Yeah, I would guess that too. Isn't the end game, though, to fundamentally change the nature of our society so that the 1% are no longer running the game?
What is the
running a rigged game?
Hall's end game?
I beg your pardon?
The thing that's no. I'm talking about what is Mayor Kwan's end game? What does she see? Being accomplished with this eviction. Right. This is a real open question for me because, you know, if anybody thinks that Occupy Oakland as a movement, as a new kind of, you know, a cultural manifestation, if you will, is going to go away, they are deluding themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a chance of it. Or anywhere else in the country. In fact, this is a movement that is growing and it's going to continue to grow. And there's a lot of people coming in, you know, trying to stake their post to it and say, you know, we're the particular spokespeople for it. Beware. But yeah. So.
And in the immediate term, people are reconvening today at 4 p.m. local time at the main branch of the public library in Oakland.
Okay, and that'll be the reset, basically.
That will be the reset, and we'll see where it goes from there. I'll be out there, and I will certainly let you know what's happening.
Okay, great. Joshua Holland, thank you very much for the feedback and any. We've got about a minute and a half if you wanted to. No, we don't. We have 30 seconds. Any final thoughts before we hit the break?
You're always ripping me off. I thought I had a minute and a half. No, I'm exhausted and I need to nap.
Okay. Well, have a good sleep, and we'll talk with you after you get back out there. Joshua Holland, alternate.org. Thank you. Thank you, Joshua.